Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for a session for our November National Career Development or National Professional Development Month, which is nationwide, but we're celebrating it here at Free to Praise Solutions Incorporated with Technique Tuesdays. So today is the first Tuesday where we'll feature our session with upcoming sessions on the 16th, as well as a panel discussion on the 30th. So thank you for joining us. If you would do me a favor, if you're joining and you see me now, why don't you share this to your page or invite a friend to join us for the conversation? I think this is very important and critical information to give you tools as to how you can have effective conversations that matter to your career. So while I'm asking you to do that, I'm going to do it as well, just to make sure that we are up and live. I'm going to share it to my viewing audience and hope some individuals will join in and share with us tonight. Hopefully, everybody is having an awesome Tuesday. You've had a great day today. It is now fall for real. And so hopefully, you are getting ready for the holidays that are coming up. But what we also want to make sure you're doing is getting ready to prepare yourself in your career and to make sure that you are prepared to have the right conversations, right? So give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure we are live and I'm going to share this in just a moment. Oh, it looks like we are live. Can I? All right, give me 1 second. I'm sharing it now. I found it. And we also have some individuals who are registered in the group, so they'll be able to ask questions if need be. But if you do have questions, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll do our best to answer those questions. I love for these sessions to be engaging, so that way you are able to get the information that you would like and make sure that this is effective and applicable to your life. So I'm almost done sharing to my viewing audience, and then we'll get started. We'll give a few minutes just for a couple people. We won't be on here too long, just have some good information to share. So let's get started. All right, and Technique Tuesday. All right, I think we are good. I have shared it. Yeah, all right. So I'll keep this up in order for me to see the chat as well in case someone asks questions. All right. So thank you for joining us again. My name is LaShonda Briggs. I am the Director of Professional Development within Free to Praise Solutions Incorporated, which is a faith-based nonprofit organization that has been functioning and effectively helping the community for a little over a year now. So we're excited about this branch and all the other branches of our organization. So tonight we're going to talk about how to have the right conversations. So let me make sure my computer is wanting to cooperate with me. There we go. And the importance of having the right conversation and what we're looking to achieve tonight is to discover the importance of a career-centered conversation when it comes to your own development and your pursuit of challenging yourself and growing in your career. And then secondly, hopefully through this session and by the end of the session, you'll be prepared as a participant to engage in having targeted conversations with your leadership. So I know that that may happen in various ways. You may have a manager, or you may have a supervisor, or you may have a team lead, or however the title of the person that's responsible for supporting you in your career, that's who we're talking about having these targeted conversations. And based on the tools and the tips that we share tonight, you may actually be able to use these nuggets in order to apply it to having other conversations that might not necessarily be within a working environment, but maybe in a personal environment or something that means a little bit more to you outside of your professional development. So let's continue. So I wanted to identify and talk a little bit about the employee manager, or you can put whatever fits in that category, employee supervisor, employee team lead relationship. What should you expect from this relationship, and what is expected of you? And I'll go a little bit further to talk about more so what the organization should be structured to provide you. And I alluded to that a little bit the other night when I was talking about the session we would have. So, as an employee manager relationship, what you should expect is that you should, one, feel supported, right? Essentially, when you show up to work, you are there to perform a task, perform actions, achieve certain objectives, deliver results. In that, you should be supported in how you go about doing that. Your manager, your supervisor, your team lead, they should be there in order to help remove obstacles that keep you from being able to be successful at what your job description says you're capable of doing or you should be doing. That's one thing that you should expect. So not only should you expect support, but I believe, and these are all personal truths and experience from my background. I didn't give you that in the beginning, but I'll pause here to let you know that I do have over 10 years of leadership experience working for a Fortune 500 organization. And I'm also a certified Society of Human Resource Management certified participant as well, in which we delve deep into not just book knowledge, but also from personal experience, actually what works in the employee manager relationship. And so I believe not only should you expect to be supported, but you should also expect to have an advocate, someone that's there to be able to highlight opportunities that will challenge you, to advocate for you when necessary, to put your name in places that you may not necessarily think that you possibly are qualified to be in, but they see something in you. You should be able to know that you have a leader that is supporting you and that is advocating for your best interests, right? And then lastly, I believe also as a leader, you should have someone that is invested in you as a person, not just as an employee, right? You're not just a number. You're not just another person in a seat or behind a desk, but you're actually an individual that brings all of what makes you you to your work, right? People say, oh, you should be able to separate your job from your personal life. And in certain respects, you have to learn how to balance, which is often called work-life balance, but you have to learn how to balance the two. But ultimately, you are still an individual. So all of the characteristics, your personality, everything that makes you you is a part of who you are when you show up to work. And so you should have in a leader, someone that's invested in you. So support, advocacy, and someone that's invested in you. But this isn't a one-way relationship, okay? What makes an employee manager supervisor relationship work is that it's reciprocal. There are things that are shared. So if you have someone that is supporting you, that's advocating for you, and that's investing in you and invested in you as a person, there are some things that are expected of you as an employee, right? One of those things is to perform. You're there to do a job. You're there expected to deliver results. And that's what you're expected to do. It should be a given. That's why you're getting paid. So that's a part of the relationship. You are being supported in getting that job done. So you should be able to show up with the mindset that I have a job to do and I'm going to deliver on what I'm expected to do, right? But what also is expected of you, which I believe, is that not only should your leader be invested in you, but you should be invested in what's important to you and be able to communicate that. And what I mean by invested in yourself is that you are willing to grow, to take on challenges, to promote yourself. And people are motivated by different things. Some people want recognition. Some people want instant gratification. Some people want more money. Whatever your motivation is, it should be something that allows you to be invested in what will help you get there, right? And that's what we're wanting to segue and talk about tonight is most of this starts with a conversation. And one of the key elements I think also that makes an employee manager relationship work, I'll give you two, is transparency and trust. It's hard to work for someone that you cannot trust. And it's hard supporting someone that you cannot trust, right? But I think you build those elements of trust by being transparent, some may say vulnerable, being invested in the people itself, right? Not the fact that this is your manager, but your manager is a person too, just like you. And they have situations or things that happen in life that goes on that's affecting everyone. So I think, being able to establish a relationship of trust is important when it comes to an employee manager relationship. And if you have that investment of trust, then you're able to have conversations. But some people just don't know how to have the right conversation. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. All right. So, how do you determine when it's time to have the talk or a talk with your leadership? Should you do it in the beginning of your career? Should you do it midpoint into your career? Or should you do it in the end? So, if you're watching, I'm looking at the chat. So, let's see what the responses are. Do you think you should have the conversation in the beginning? Should you have a conversation at midpoint? Should you have a conversation in the end? What say ye? So I'm looking to see what people are saying. When should you have the conversation? So we have a response in the chat bubble. So let's see. Midpoint, all right. Are there any viewers on live that would like to give some insight? When do you think you should have the right conversation with your leadership? In the beginning, midpoint, or the end? So we have one individual that says all on the live. There are a few more people who are watching. So let's see. In the beginning, okay. Any other responses? So here's what I'll tell you. Depending on the conversation, it can happen at any point in time. I believe all applies in this case. When you start a new job or when you start a new career, you should be able to establish communication, right? Because what is always said, communication is key. So you should be able to establish communication with your leaders to identify, well, I won't go ahead of myself about what you should be talking about, but you should be able to establish that communication in the beginning, right? You want to know what's expected of you, what can you expect from your leadership or from your organization as your career is going. You need to be having continual conversations. If you're invested in challenging yourself, growing, doing more, taking on more tasks, taking on more responsibility, no one will know that unless you say something. So midpoint, at any point, is something you should have a conversation, right? And then oftentimes when you get to the end of your career journey at whatever location, they will always ask you for an exit interview, right? When you're approaching the end, or you know that you're approaching the end, the relationship that you've established with your leader, it shouldn't be a secret, right? It shouldn't catch anybody by surprise, hopefully. And this is kind of an ideal situation. So we know that all situations don't apply, but in most cases, you should be able to have a conversation with your leadership about what's your next step? How are you transitioning out? What will that look like? What you received, what could be done better? Providing feedback. So feedback is a two-way street. So when is it time to talk? At any point in time deemed necessary. The beginning, the midpoint, and the end. So what we really want to know is, what should you be talking about, right? What should you be talking about? How do you prepare for the conversation? So let me give a little context about said conversation. What I'm talking about is a conversation, and this is based on my own experience, is that oftentimes I had the pleasure of supporting individuals that really did not think any further about their career than just getting the job itself. And I'll tell you, I was one of those people. When I started with my previous employer back in 2006, I was fresh out of college, looking for and glad to be employed, to have a job where I had some income. And I thought nothing more about what was next. I was just glad to be employed, right? Anybody been there? Yeah, I'm sure we all have. And I was young at the time, or, in a juvenile state of my career, so to speak. but I wasn't prepared or thinking about having a conversation that talked about what I wanted out of where I was working or what opportunities were really there for me. And that's a downfall that I think plagues not just myself at that time, this generation, and just in general. Some people will sit in their seats or at their desk and they will talk about the problem. They will complain about what they don't like. They will talk about what they're dissatisfied with. And guess what? They're talking to the wrong people. They're talking to their peers, they're talking to their coworkers who may also feel the same way that you do. But they can't change the situation, and talking about it isn't changing it either for you. So when we talk about being prepared to have the conversation is just really about what do you need to say at a certain time, given the circumstances or the variables that are creating the situation. It could be a situation where you are dissatisfied with the work that you've been given, or you want to do more and you feel like you're not being fulfilled in your job, or you feel like, it may be time to leave where you are and pursue something different. These are all the types of conversations that can happen in an employee-manager relationship. So it does not necessarily apply to just one conversation itself, but this is all about how to prepare to have it, whatever the conversation may be. All right. And these are tools that I think that you can, utilize in various forms. One of the things about communication is, I believe communication should be intentional and it should be thoughtful. So when you are an employee, you should be thinking about what's your intent of having the said conversation. And we just identified what some of those conversations might be. It could be about how you're not satisfied with the environment. You might not be satisfied with the work. You might, you might want to take on more tasks, or you feel like you need to be challenged, or, you just really feeling complacent about what you're doing and you don't know what to do next. Whatever your intention is for the conversation, you should know that before having this dialogue with your leadership. So first thing is to identify your intent. What is the intention of this conversation, right? Where does this coming, what place is this coming from? Is it coming from your desire to want to do more? Is it coming from your desire to change some things personally? Is it something that you're trying to pursue now? Do you have a new goal in mind for yourself? Are you looking to challenge yourself? Whatever it is, identify your intent. That's the whole purpose. Secondly, you identify your intent, but you should also identify for yourself what your desired outcome is. So ultimately, if you were able to essentially role play this conversation, how would it look? What would be the desired outcome? What looks like a successful conversation based on what you would like to present or what you would like to talk about? So identify your desired outcome. What is the best case scenario? What is the worst case scenario? What is it that you'd like to come out of the conversation? Once you identified your intent and identified your desired outcome, you can then request the meeting, right? But before getting the meeting, you may need to go ahead and document down what you're looking to talk about. And this is to help you be prepared for the conversation. I believe that when you take the time to prepare for anything and you show up and you're engaging another audience or someone else, when they see your level of preparedness, it makes them rise to the occasion if they were not already prepared to do so, but it allows them to take you seriously, right? Because they know that this isn't something you just thought about. It isn't something that just crossed your mind, or you were just upset one day and you wanted to, air your concerns. No, you were being thoughtful and intentional about what you had to say, what the desired outcome is. Now, there's more that goes into actually having the conversation, and that goes along with other variables like nonverbal, how to read people's body language, what they aren't saying that they're saying. So it's not necessarily by words, but I believe the statistic states that, if I'm not mistaken, 55% of our communication is nonverbal. So over half of what people receive from us when we're talking or when we're communicating is not what we say. It's how we look, our facial expression, all these other factors. So you can have a defensive posture, and people will read it. You don't have to be a psychic. You could see people's facial expressions. And that's something that I had to work on because my expressions tend to be written on my face. However, you have to learn how to maintain a certain posture and disposition, but also not allow your emotion to show up all the time, because your emotion can take the conversation in another direction. So it depends on what the conversation is, obviously, but if it's something that you're passionate about, if it's something that you are invested in, it may, show up in a certain way. So you want to be, tactful, thoughtful, and intentional. All right. And if you do have any questions, again, just a reminder, you can put them in the chat within Zoom, or you can post them on the live. I'm kind of peeking every now and then to make sure we're not missing any questions or content. All right. So in the conversation, here's some things that you should do. Okay. As I just mentioned, your disposition is everything. So remain positive. Don't go into the conversation, or try not to go into the conversation with an outlook of, well, this is pointless. I don't even know why I'm here. This is not going to be fruitful. I've talked to them before. This isn't going to work. They're not going to take me serious. They're not going to hear me. Like, all those things are only going to make the conversation that much more difficult. And I believe is that what you put out is what you receive. What you reap is what you sow. So if you show up and you are just completely disenchanted with the idea of having said conversation, the likelihood of it being productive, for it being fruitful, for it providing something of substance, is likely to not occur if you don't come with the right mindset and the right disposition, okay? In the conversation, be prepared to listen. Conversations are dialogues, two-way communications. So sometimes, when individuals request meetings or they desire to have a conversation, they get everything out they want to, and they turn off their ears. And whatever is being facilitated in the conversation between the two parties, they're not being heard. Each party is not efficiently and effectively being heard because you got out what you needed to say, and that was a wrap. No, you should be prepared to listen as well, because that's when you hear if the other party has been listening to you based on what they say back to you, what they understood that you said. That's when you know how effective the conversation is going. Okay. And these conversations ensure that your needs are being communicated. And sometimes that means pausing to ensure that your thoughts are well prepared before speaking, in order to ensure that when you do open your mouth and you have something to say, that you are speaking to fact, that you're speaking with information that is not rooted in emotion, right? Because I think sometimes when we show up and it may be something that we're passionate about or emotional about, but when we start talking about it, once again, as I mentioned, the emotion shows up, and then the core of the conversation is missed because now we're responding to your emotions, or the person is responding to your emotions. So ensure that your needs are communicated. How you do that is the preparation in advance. You identify what the intent is, what you'd like to see come out of the conversation. So if your needs are, you're not feeling fulfilled in your current work and you feel like you need more of a challenge, that's what should be left in the conversation when you're having that dialogue with your leader. And you should be able to tie that back to something substantive that makes sense to why they would advocate for you to do more, not that it's just self-fulfilling or self-gratifying, but what does it do for your organization? Or what will it do for your team? Or what will it do to make your supervisors load lighter, or whatever the case may be, or to get the work done? So there should be an invested interest between two, but ensure that your needs are communicated. And then take notes throughout the conversation. You want to be able to capture what what your leader is saying to you, because I believe in accountability. So if there's something that's being stated to you or being committed to you that will take place or will change or will happen for you, you need to take notes. When did this conversation happen? Who said it? And what is being said? Because then you can go back and say, well, we met on this date, and when we met, we had this discussion, and these were the things I was expecting. Help me understand how we can get there, right? So I'm preparing you to have an elevated conversation, because once again, we're talking about a relationship that has transparency and trust. Okay. But that could be a whole nother session for a whole nother day about how to build transparency and trust in your working relationships, but it can be done. So don't lose hope. All right. So that's what you should do in the conversation. And we're just about done. After the conversation, these are the things you should walk away with. You should walk away feeling like you have a plan for whatever the task is, for whatever the ask is. There should be a plan in place where you know what your next steps are, right? So what am I doing after this conversation? If I've talked to my manager about wanting to diversify my skill sets, how is that going to happen? How soon is that going to happen? When can I expect, the first opportunity to come? Or what do I have to do to prepare myself to be able to walk into that opportunity? Do I have to take a certain training? If so, when can I get time, or when will I schedule myself to do that training, right? There should be a plan with some steps of what you should be doing after this conversation is over, because once again, it goes back to the accountability measure. Set your follow-up, right? So this just shouldn't be, as I mentioned before, when should a conversation happen? The beginning, midpoint, and the end. This shouldn't just be a one and done conversation where you meet with your manager or your supervisor and you have a good conversation and you walk away with a plan, and then they don't hear from you or you don't hear from them at all anymore. No, it's continual. It's a consistent conversation. You should be checking in to determine how's your progress. Are you meeting your goals? What are the plan? Are you meeting the steps or the legs of your plan in order to prepare you for what's next, or to transition you into what's next, or whatever the case may be. All right. And simply get to it, right? A lot of times we will set a plan. We will have something in mind to do, and then so many other things will come on our plate. So many other things will start to take priority, and we will take time to do other things and not take time to do for ourselves. So you should get to it. If you have the plan in place, you've talked to your leader, you set things in motion for what's to come next. The next thing is to get to it. Do something about it. Prepare yourself to have accomplished something, even if it's small, quick wins. Something, if it's, you took an additional training outside of the scope of your normal required training, because this is something that will help diversify your skill sets. Or you set a meeting with someone else in another department to have a one-on-one or side saddle or a virtual session to understand a little bit more about what they do. You are preparing to transition out of your job and you've had that conversation with your leader. Now you should be looking at where you're going next and making sure your resume is tight and ready to be broadcasted to potential employers, right? Whatever the plan is, whatever the steps are, get to work. That's all you got to do, right? So I think, this is the other thing. I mentioned it earlier, and I'll say it again because it's important enough to say again. You should recap your conversation in writing. So if you've met with your leader or manager or supervisor, an easy way to document what was said is to track it in email. So send them a follow-up, thank them for their time and attention, recap what was discussed, or what was the outcome of the conversations, and the next set time for a follow-up. Send that in an email, because I'm sure it will become a part of record. And as a part of record, it builds support for what your next steps in your career are going to look like, or what your next steps in the plan forward is going to look like. When you have it recapped in email, you know what's happened. Both parties are aware, and it's always good. So a saying that we used to have in my old job is, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. So yeah, write it down, write it down, write it down. All right. So hopefully you have received some helpful information about having the right conversation, we will open the floor for questions now or comments. So feel free to put your comments in the live. If you're wondering, if you want one-on-one counseling guidance around maybe some challenging situations within your workplace, because I do know they exist as well. All right. Feel free to reach out to us. Career counseling is something that we do, and happy to do it. So I'm looking here to see if there's any questions in the chat. We have some viewers that are still watching, and we have some viewers that are in our Zoom. So what you can do for me is either ask your questions in the chat or type in a takeaway. What's something that you picked up from tonight's session that either you can apply or you can share with someone else to help them have the right conversation? Anything? I didn't do too bad. About 30 minutes, a little less than 30 minutes. So I can give you all time back to your Tuesday so you can enjoy your tacos or something. Any questions? Any comments? And on our Facebook Live, our information is listed there where you can contact us. f2pcareer@gmail.com is our email address. Also, you can contact us by text, which our contact number, you can call or text, is 410-774-6170. And we are also on Facebook. For those who are watching Facebook, you know that. And we're also on Instagram as well. Yes, so someone in the chat said, I'll have to do a recap conversation in writing. Absolutely. Here's what I've learned is that you will be held accountable in your workplace. And I believe it's okay for you to hold others accountable. You just have to have the documentation, the proof, the information to support what it is, okay? So we do have a question on Facebook Live. How do you deal with leadership that is having a very stressful day on the day of the meeting? That's a very good question. I would suggest a couple of things. One, if this is the day of your conversation, and here's what we would hope is that your leader would be intuitive enough to say, today's not the best day for us to talk. So can we reschedule? If they don't do it and you see that they're stressed out, then be okay with coming to them and saying, hey, I know we were scheduled for our meeting today, but it looks like you have a lot on your plate. Would it be best if we reschedule or set this for a later time today, right? I believe it's okay to ask that, to initiate that you already see signs of stress. Now, if they say, no, let's go ahead and continue, and the conversation starts, and you see that the conversation does not seem to be going in the right direction, or the dialogue, it just seems to be a strain, then you can pause in the meeting and say something to the effect of, I'd hope for this conversation to go a little bit differently, and I'm not certain if this is the best time for us to have the conversation. And that can go both ways, because you could be stressed out on the day of your meeting and you don't want to have this conversation. But I think it's about being able to dialogue and have the open, honest, transparent conversation and say, this may not be a good time, or based on what I perceive, it does not look like now might be the best time for us to meet. Would it be okay? Or are you comfortable with rescheduling? Is that okay with you? Or do you want to continue? And leave it up to them, but also you get to make the call, right? You get to make the call. So hopefully that answered your question. And thank you for the question. A takeaway was always keep a positive disposition. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. So we have a comment that said, just had a conversation with my director. She said she would get back to me. It's been 3 days. When should I send a recap in writing? Now, right? A part of that is also when you have that conversation and they say, I'll get back to you, ask them, do you have an idea of approximately when? What would be a reasonable time before I send a follow-up email if I don't hear from you? Here's the thing, because they literally may have overwhelming things hitting them from left to right, fires popping up everywhere, and it's not intentional for them not to get back to you or to reach out to you. It just may be that on their list of things to do, getting back to you just started moving further and further down the list. But what should happen is a communication so that you're aware. If you have not received that that follow-up and it's been 3 days, I would say 3 business days is an appropriate time to send a recap follow-up and say, hey, we met on such and such date. I'm expecting a follow-up from you based on XYZ. When should I expect to receive, a response? Or, what does your schedule look like for us to recap or meet again? Something to that extent. Okay. What other questions do you have? Hope that answers your question in the Zoom. But one of the things you want to do is, set the expectation for the follow-up when you have the initial conversation. Because here's what I can guarantee you, in other levels of leadership, when they're tasked with certain actions or expected to do certain things, they're given a timeline, or they find out what their deadline is, and they will prioritize what is necessary based on the deadline given. It's okay for you to do the same. It's okay for you to do the same. Okay. Any other questions? I have time. I don't have anywhere to go. I am more than happy to answer any other questions. Once again, for those who didn't hear it before, if you'd like to send a question, you don't want to ask it publicly on our Zoom or on the session, feel free to do so by emailing F2, and that's the number 2, the letter P, career@gmail.com. We'll be sure to get back to you. You can text or call us at 410-774-6170, or you can message us on Facebook or on Instagram. And also feel free to reach out and connect with us on our website. So our website is www.free-praise.org. Where you can connect with us. If we don't have your contact information, feel free to just share it with us so we can keep you in the loop of what we have going on. We have some other sessions that are coming up this month. So we'll be back on November the 16th at 7 p.m. And we will be talking a more intensive conversation around interviewing and how to prepare for that. And then I'm excited about this part as well, on November the 30th, which is the last Tuesday of this month, we'll have a panel discussion focused on how to achieve entrepreneurial success. And so if you are an entrepreneur, or if you are not, or you're thinking about, or you're not thinking about being an entrepreneur, I would suggest that you still come, join in with the conversation, the dialogue, and the discussion so you can get information to share with maybe not applicable to you, but with someone that you know, someone who's an entrepreneur or thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. We're certainly excited to support and help them as well. All righty. Well, I think we will wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us and sticking with us tonight as we talked about how to have the right conversation. We look forward to connecting with you again, and thank you for joining Technique Tuesdays. We will see you on the flip side in 2 weeks. So take care, have a blessed night, and stay safe. Bye.